June 9th, 2016, Thursday of the 10th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the first book of Kings. Elijah said to Ahab, "Go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." So Ahab went up to eat and drink, while Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, crouched down to the earth, and put his head between his knees. "Climb up and look out to sea," he directed his servant, who went up and looked, but reported, "There is nothing." 7 times he said, "Go, look again." And the 7th time the youth reported, "There is a cloud as small as a man's hand rising from the sea." Elijah said, "Go and say to Ahab, harness up and leave the mountain before the rain stops you." In a trice the sky grew dark with clouds and wind, and a heavy rain fell. Ahab mounted his chariot and made for Jezreel. But the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, who girded up his clothing and ran before Ahab, as far as the approaches to Jezreel. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "It is right to praise you in Zion, O God. You have visited the land and watered it. Greatly have you enriched it. God's watercourses are filled. You have prepared the grain. It is right to praise you in Zion, O God. Thus have you prepared the land, drenching its furrows, breaking up its clods, softening it with showers, blessing its yield. It is right to praise you in Zion, O God. You have crowned the year with your bounty, and your paths overflow with a rich harvest. The untilled meadows overflow with it, and rejoicing clothes the hills. It is right to praise you in Zion, O God."
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to your ancestors, 'You shall not kill, and whoever kills will be liable to judgment.' But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. And whoever says to his brother, 'Raca,' will be answerable to the Sanhedrin. And whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to fiery Gehenna. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there recall that your brother has anything against you, leave your gift there at the altar. Go first and be reconciled with your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Settle with your opponent quickly while on the way to court with him. Otherwise, your opponent will hand you over to the judge, and the judge will hand you over to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Amen, I say to you, you will not be released until you have paid the last penny." The Gospel of the Lord.
June 9th, Thursday of the 10th week of Ordinary Time, the Memorial of St. Ephrem. The first reading comes from 1 Kings 18, 41-46. Yesterday we heard about how Elijah had a contest with the priest of Baal on Mount Carmel, and he proved that God was the only God. God was the only one who could provide fertility in the land, for the people had been praying to Baal to bring rain on the crops. Their logic was that God was a God of the desert. That's where they first encountered God, in the Sinai. Whereas Baal was a god of fertility, a god of agriculture. So they prayed to Baal when they planted crops, when they needed rain, and they'd pray to Yahweh in other times. Elijah showed them that they should pray only to Yahweh. In the account that we hear today, we hear about how God provides rain for the people. He tells Ahab the king to go and drink because rain is on the way. And then he sends his servant, who looks 7 times into the sky and sees nothing. But the 8th time he looks and sees a cloud the size of a man's hand rising from the sea. Now, in Hebrew, there's a little thing that's called Kateh Kariv, which means it's written this way, but you really pronounce it another way. What's really written in the original text is that it's the size of a man's foot. And in Hebrew, the foot is not always the foot. It's a euphemism for a man's sexual organ. And what the author is trying to say is that God is the God of fertility. But there's just no way we can read out at Mass that it looks like a man's sexual organ. So even in ancient times, the Jewish people said that it looks like a man's hand. The bottom line is that God is the God of fertility, brings rain upon the earth. The Gospel is from Matthew 5:20 to 26. Jesus is speaking with the scribes and the Pharisees, and the scribes and the Pharisees try to live the law to its widest possible interpretation. They try to build a fence around the law, meaning they take the law to its widest possible interpretation to make sure they don't break the smallest part of the law. Well, Jesus does that too, but in a spiritual way, not in a scrupulous way. For example, he takes the commandment, you shall not kill, and he realizes that there are a lot of ways to kill. One could kill another person's hope, another person's reputation. One could kill a person in a small way by simply being angry at that person. So he says anyone who calls his brother a fool is subject to the Sanhedrin. He is saying that we should make peace with other people, and the commandment against killing should be interpreted in its widest possible extent. Even today, we could be killing ourselves by not keeping our diet. We could be killing others by not fighting for the right to life. And we could say to ourselves, I didn't do anything. And the response is, right, you didn't do anything. You didn't save lives. So what Jesus is trying to say in all of this is not that we should be scrupulous and always feeling guilty, but at the same time, we should never feel self-satisfied. We should never feel that we've kept the law simply because we didn't go out and shoot someone. We should examine our consciences very clearly to make sure we didn't kill that person in another more subtle way. And may God bless us.